can go right to our blog at ed.msnbc.com, and I'll bring you the results later in the show. But right now, joining me are Terry O'Neill, president of the National Organization for Women, and the Griot contributor Zerlina Maxwell. So, Zerlina, you're here. I'm going to start with you. Do Democrats have a coherent strategy for wooing women voters that goes beyond just talking about abortion?
Well, I think so, because, you know, the Republicans aren't only talking about abortion. They went above and beyond. They started talking about birth control, which is all women. That's not Republican or Democratic women. That's all women, and even religious women. And so I think that focusing on the fact that we should be able to control our reproductive health, which includes birth control, it's not just abortion, that is a winning issue for Democrats. That's where we should focus all of our attention, because that has the ability to attract the most broad coalition of voters.
But, so, Terry, I mean, Zerlina makes a good point that you have to get beyond the abortion debate, because in reality, it is not a slam dunk, even among women. It's still sort of a 50-50 issue in the country. So have Democrats made a mistake by focusing so much of their war on women rhetoric around the issue of abortion and not broadening it out, as Zerlina said, to really hit at the idea of contraception?
Oh, I think the Democrats actually are moving into the contraception realm. And also, I think it's very interesting that the Democrats are moving into the economic agenda for women and really trying to draw, I believe, a sharp distinction between Democrats, this is particularly going on in the House of Representatives, and Republicans around such economic issues, sick days and paid extended leave, but child care, which we haven't seen be an issue in a long time, and the minimum wage. Democrats are embracing the minimum wage as a means of lifting up the wages of women, because 2/3 of minimum wage workers are women. So I think you're going to see a lot more of that in 2014. And as Zerlina says, I think the Democrats really do need to go and put a spotlight on the birth control issue.
And Zerlina, you know, one of the constant conundrums for Democrats, unlike in presidential years like 2012, in midterms, the electorate has fewer young women, has fewer minority women. What messaging do you think will work with those women? Because is that a cohort that is going to care more about reproductive issues, or do Democrats need to find really specific issues to micro-target them?
Well, I think they certainly do need, every election is local, that's the saying. But I think the Virginia gubernatorial race is a point of clarity for Democrats, because one of the things that happened in that race was black women. Black women made up the gender gap. And so if we're focusing more on people of color, low-income women, and like Terry said, women that are making minimum wage, I think that that's the place to start to win in the midterm elections next year. I'm also looking forward to seeing how Hillary Clinton factors in to getting, you know, Democrats excited and engaged, particularly the women candidates running next year.
You know, and whether or not it's a slam dunk issue, Terry, it really has been alarming the extent to which Republicans have been not shy at all about going after reproductive rights specifically, not just on a national level, but in the states. And I'm wondering if that granularity, even going to localities and going after reproductive rights on a local level, and that granularity is the core of the Republican advantage, and whether Democrats are missing that point.
Joy, you know, I think actually that is backfiring against the Republicans. In Albuquerque, New Mexico, for the first time ever, we had a flat, and it was the city council that was trying to pass this, and they put it up for on a ballot measure, a referendum. We defeated that. Our allies, now and its allies, defeated that at the municipal level by a 60%. We got a 10-point margin. I think the 60% of the voters said no, we don't want that kind of restriction on abortion care. And so I think, yes, the Republicans, and by the way, there's a number of municipalities, too, in Virginia that are trying to criminalize abortion, and I think it's going to backfire significantly. It's really interesting to see what happened in Virginia, and in fact, in many ways, that gubernatorial race was nationalized. It was really Ken Cuccinelli, Mr. Mandatory Transvaginal Ultrasound, against Terry McAuliffe, who very, very openly said, I will keep the abortion clinics open. I will make sure that women have health care, that they have birth control. I'll make sure that women have the things that they need. And by campaigning that way, Terry McAuliffe was able to win. I think it's very important to recognize that he won. It was really the African-American women's vote that won the day in Virginia, but it was also young voters, men and women, who are with us in this fight. And that's a really interesting demographic, I think.
And that young voter demographic really is going to be so important. I mean, you talk about states like Michigan, where you have anti-abortion legislation. legislation on the table. You talk about states like Pennsylvania, Ohio. There are a bunch of swing states that are up now. But Democrats have not had good success in getting younger voters and getting minority voters out in midterms. Is it enough to talk about the Republican war on women? Because young women need to come out for a lot of issues. Is it enough to focus on reproductive rights and even contraception?
Well, no, I think that we need to connect reproductive rights with economic justice, right? So reproductive rights and preventative health care, that's an economic issue for women and families. That's not just, you know, a women-only issue. And so if we broaden it out and talk about how making sure that I have access to birth control so that I can, you know, have control over my destiny, going to college and not getting pregnant when I don't want to, that's an economic issue for women and families. Also, too, we need to do a better job as Democrats to explain what trap laws are, because trap laws are going to be the de facto end to Roe v. Wade in this country if Democrats don't get on offense on that. Because right now, I mean, in Texas, for example, with Wendy Davis, that was actually a loss for Democrats.
And these are laws, trap laws are these laws that require clinics to adhere to a certain set of policies that are almost impossible. So
so they just closes clinics, It ends up closing clinics, and you know, there's 20 clinics for 26 million women in Texas, and that's ridiculous. And we need to explain this to voters so that they know that trap laws, which are framed as making it more safe for women, really just de facto end your constitutional right to abortion.
And you know, Terry, it's interesting because mentioning Wendy Davis, as Zerlina just did, it strikes me that one of the other issues that Republicans have is not even just policy, but also tone, right? Whether or not people agree with the idea of abortion being legal, the idea that she's being called abortion Barbie, sort of the way that she is talked to and talked about by Republicans is an issue. I'm not sure how much Democrats have made of it, but how does that strike you as leading an organization that is by and for women? You know, just this idea of her being derided and dismissed as a Barbie doll.
Sure. I mean, that again is going to, I think, backfire against the Republicans. I've already seen some evidence that it has. In fact, my organization has called out misogynistic attacks on women who step into the public sphere. And we did that when Sarah Palin was unfairly attacked as a woman, as opposed to we attacked her for her policies all the time, but not because she was a woman. And that's the distinction we draw. That those attacks on Wendy Davis are clearly misogynistic. They're aimed at her as a woman who stands for certain policies. So I think that's going to backfire against the Republicans. I also think that something that's going to backfire against them, and it's happening in Texas, is yes, you have tens of millions of women who are affected by these trap laws, these anti-abortion laws. You have hundreds of thousands of women who have been mobilized by this outrageous attack on women's access to basic health care. And what's happening is that the more, and this is really interesting, I think, the more the Republicans go after birth control, right, which they're doing, and it's in the courts right now, so it's not really out there in the legislative realm, but it's in the courts. The more they go after birth control, the more people see them going after birth control, the stronger supports for the whole range of reproductive health care services gets, including abortion care. So it's a really interesting, I think, phenomenon that you find in the polling. But my prediction is women are becoming more and more mobilized because we are learning more and more about what's going on state by state. And I think 2014, and the trick for the Democratic Party, frankly, the trick for my organization, Democrats or Republicans, we're trying to get pro-women candidates elected. But the real effort is going to be around turnout, getting our demographics to the polls to vote. And that, by the way, also means stopping these voter suppression efforts. Texas is a classic example of voter suppression efforts that have completely gone national. And that's bad for the Republican Party.
Yeah, and one way, Zerlina, in which the voting rights issue dovetails with the issue of reproductive rights, because, of course, those voting rights laws in Texas in particular really do affect women.
And women of color, right? So the reproductive rights restrictions impact women of color, and the voter suppression impacts women of color. And so we're under attack from all angles.
The war on women from multiple angles. All right, thank you so much, Terry O'Neill, as well as Zerlina Maxwell. Thanks to both of you. And